Hey everybody, welcome to Yes and Improv. I'm Jack Rita. I'm an improviser and comedian and game designer, and I've been performing improv since the mid '80s in high school, and then professionally starting in the '90s. And in this video, I wanted to focus on a particular class of short form improv games that are known as naive games. So I'm going to talk about what are naive games, and then some tips and philosophies on how to do them well. So a naive game is any kind of improv game where one or more of the performers leaves the stage, leaves the whole performance venue. They go out of earshot because some information or some element of the improv scene or game is going to be gained from the audience, or is going to happen without them having any knowledge of it. So typically, most naive games are guessing games, although not all of them are. But an example, there's a classic improv game called Chain Murder or Chain Death or Murder Mystery. It's any number of games. It's a little bit like telephone. And what's going to happen is you'll send multiple players out of the performance venue, usually 3, and you'll have one who stays behind and is given information from the audience, or they get that information. And it's usually 3 things. It's almost clue-like. It's going to be probably an occupation, some kind of location, and some kind of object, a household item, something not typically associated with murder, so not a weapon per se. And then one of the other performers is going to come back in, and they're going to do, it's not really a little scene, it's just a little performance that is acted out, but it's either done silently, just using pantomime, or sometimes with gibberish or sound effects to try to get that person who just came back in to guess what those things are. But they're not going to guess out loud. They're just going to try to indicate that they understand what it is. So if you're getting an occupation like a dentist, they'll do a little mini dentist scene to try to convey that concept of dentist. And so, and then what happens is once all 3 of those suggestions or topics are ostensibly guessed by the first person who's come back in, they will murder the clue giver, not for real, but they'll act that out. And usually, what they do is they're doing it with whatever that household item is, or best case, that's what they're doing. And then the next player will come in, and they will have those clues given to them by the first murderer, who will then be murdered by the second person to come in. And then the last person will come in and go through the same exercise. And then we'll ask that last person if they know what those things are. Another example would be a game like 5 Things, or any number of things. And that's where you're starting off with some kind of physical activity. Maybe it's a sport or a chore, any kind of an activity, which you then modify by replacing components of that activity with things that are normally not associated with it at all. And so those things are given as clues to one person who is not, they are the naive person. They don't know anything about what was gathered, and they're trying to guess it. And again, this is done through pantomime and usually gibberish. An example of something that is a naive game that doesn't involve gibberish is one that we used to play called Crime Story. Again, it has many different names, Criminal Mind. That is where somebody is sent out of the room and they're not going to get any of the suggestions or topics from the audience. And when they come back in, they're going to be interrogated as if they're at a police station by the other performers who are trying to get them to confess to having done some crime at some kind of location using some kind of object, or whatever the variables are. They're not hard and fast. You can change things up. There could be an accomplice. There could be a motive even. And so they're trying to confess to it in a roundabout way. So, and then one more example of one that there's no guessing at all, something that's called naive replay. And that is where you'll have one or more performers will do a short scene, maybe 1 to 2 minutes, but somebody, one or more of the other performers, is not present for the scene. But when they're doing the scene, they're doing it as if the missing people are in the scene and they're reacting to it. They're doing things with them. Then you bring those performers back in and you replay the scene. So the people who originally did it are trying to do it as closely as they did before. And the naive performers, the ones that were sent out of the room, are trying to insert themselves appropriately. And the comedy arises from them making mistakes or doing extraordinarily well, who knows. And so the thing that they all have in common, of course, the naive element, is that they're not present for something and then they're incorporating it. So if you're performing one of these games in a show, and the purpose of all these videos is really under the conceit that you're doing a professional show. You've charged money. People are paying to see you perform. So it needs to be entertaining. And that's going to be the bottom line with a lot of the advice that I give. There's a little bit of a dividing line between improv as art and improv as comedy. And if you have a paying audience, either of those is a perfectly viable approach. But if you're doing short form games, the comedy is often at the top of the priority list. So it needs to be funny. It needs to be compelling and entertaining, not just, good, clean scene work and improv and just crisp pantomime. That doesn't hurt. In fact, it can often help. But it needs to be entertaining. That's the thing. And the real trick with naive games is that it can very often fall into a trap of you're so focused on just trying to guess that you're no longer really in the moment of the improv. You're no longer entertaining the audience. You're just trying to figure out what it is that you don't know. And sometimes that's sort of the point. You're going to be guessing. But the audience doesn't necessarily care about you getting it right. There's entertainment value to correct guesses, but there's often as much, if not more, entertainment value to incorrect guesses. But it's ideally you have some sort of communication that's going on between the players that the audience can recognize. They recognize good clues, and if it's a wrong guess, it's because of the interpretation. And so it's like, wow, that is a totally valid way to interpret what was a really good clue. And that's funny as well. So that's the main thing that I want people who are doing naive games to remember, is that they have to be entertaining. Now, I'll give you an example of yet another naive game. So this it's called a sideline game. And it's where you've got two people, it could be more, but the basic structure is you two people, and then maybe they're having a debate. So what's going to be happening is one of them will be speaking, and they will be getting clues from other performers about the topic that they're speaking on. And it may be a specific topic, or it may just be an association of words, probably multisyllabic words that have no relationship to each other. So like my topic might be bewildering anthropologists who pontificate. And so I'm trying to guess those specific words, and the clues are being broken down to me syllable by syllable and pantomimed. Now, as the guesser, there is an envelope around the game. If it's a debate, and let's say it's a political debate, when I'm talking, I need to sound like I am at a political debate, and I'm using the conventions of that. And I'm making points, and I'm stringing together words that have some sort of meaning to them. I'm not just standing there guessing, okay? So if I'm trying to guess that they're breaking it down to a syllable, I'm trying to incorporate my guesses into my speech. Because from the audience's perspective, it's not interesting for me to just sit there and guess like it's charades, like I'm just saying angst, angry, uncle. That has no entertainment value, really. I need to be able to say, well, our aunts and our uncles, they're looking for a better future for their nieces and nephews, which would be our children. But we're also looking for a future for their children, and we have anxiety, and we're anxious about that. And we're angry sometimes that we don't get the future that we deserve. So I've worked all of those guesses into what I'm saying in the context of a political answer or debate speech. And there's other formats. So there's one where it's not a debate, it's two kids on a playground insulting each other, or it's two guys trying to pick up the same woman, or any number of different things where you're just going to be alternating between the two speakers who are guessing. And sometimes they're guessing the same thing, and sometimes they're each trying to guess something completely different. But the key here is that you're not sacrificing the entertainment of the value of the scene in order to make the guesses. And the converse is true as well. You need to be guessing. Otherwise, the people up there that are doing the physical clue giving are just spinning their wheels. So, and there's a split focus from the audience. They're looking and listening to the speaker, but they're also paying attention to the clue giving because they know what the words are. They've provided those words. So they're curious to see how it's broken down. Sometimes they forget what the word is, so they're trying to remember by also guessing in their minds what is that? He's trying a knob, and it's a door. Oh, it's door is one of the syllables, and now I remember what the word is. Or maybe they not until you put it all together. So that is the big takeaway with a lot of the naive games, especially the guessing ones, is that you've got to still entertain. If it's one of those things like 5 things where you're acting it out, you really want to try to participate. As the guesser, you've got to participate in what's going on. You're not just standing there watching them give you clues and then giving them the thumbs up when you think you know what it is. If they're trying to get you to guess that you're bungee jumping, you need to get in there and pretend to be bungee jumping, safely, but acting it out, pantomiming it. And when the bungee cord has been replaced with licorice or silly string or some other thing, jellyfish, what have you, you adjust and you act out that element as well, and you incorporate that in. And then when you give your guess, you're trying to say, yeah, I'm bungee jumping with the jellyfish cord off of the Eiffel Tower, rather than saying I'm bungee jumping, but we're not really bungee jumping with the bungee cord. That's not as entertaining as the absurd full-on activity that is what's part of it. So in this video, I'm not gonna go game by game, but if you've got specific inquiries about a particular game or whatever, let me know in the comments. I can either address it in the comments or I'll do another video. It's easy enough for me to do plenty of these short videos talking about specific games, specific types of games, or other approaches. But the big takeaway with the naive games is that you're performing this ostensibly in front of a paying audience. They're looking to be entertained. So you got to strike a balance between we're providing the information, the clues, we're guessing or we're interacting, but we're keeping part of our brain focused on this has to be entertaining. So think about the stage picture. Think about what the audience is seeing, what they're paying attention to, and how this is whole playing out. You don't want a naive game that takes 10, 15 minutes to get through. Even if it's super entertaining, it's usually not, that wasn't the plan. It was like, let's do a 15-minute shopping spree. And that's a naive game that can sometimes go on for a while. And you're getting clues in English. So I'll talk more about that one. That one is, in particular, I've got a pet peeve about how I've seen it done. So I'll do a whole breakdown on that game. But yes, if there's other things that you want to know about, let me know. That's it for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.